Okay, welcome everybody to December 15th Design Review Commission. If you are joining us not in chambers, we have several options to access this meeting. So the Zoom ID is 839-2810-3298, and the login password is 739059. And you can also watch on YouTube. So with that, can we do a roll call, please?
Yes, we can. Commissioner Killian.
Here.
Commissioner Krelling. Here. Commissioner Gorney.
Here.
Vice Chair Valia.
Here.
Chair Case.
Here.
We have a full commission and a quorum.
Wonderful. So we'll move on to item number 2, consent calendar. So an item may be placed on the consent calendar by the secretary if it's expected to be routinely approved. Anything for this evening?
No items for consent.
Fantastic. All right, on to item number 3, public communications. So this part of the meeting is for comment on items that are not on our agenda. And I know we need a moment to check our Zoom as well.
No hands up.
All right, so with that, we'll move to item number 4, our public hearings. So we'll be starting with our one and only project this evening, the Oakmont of Shadeland Senior Housing and Residential Care Facilities. We have a presentation from staff.
Hi, thank you. My name is Haley Crawford, Senior Planner here for the city. Tonight I'll be presenting Oakmont of Shadeland, which is a senior housing and residential care facility project proposed at 2800 Mitchell Drive and 1925 Oak Grove Road. This is the second time the commission has seen this application tonight. So just to kind of refresh, here is a map showing the existing site. It's in the business park, Shadeland's Business Park. It does, as I mentioned, have 2 addresses associated with the site, but the development that we're reviewing tonight is occurring on 2800 Mitchell Drive. There's just some minor kind of associated site improvements on the adjacent site. So 2800 Mitchell is shown here in that yellow star. And I'll just remind everyone of the project scope, which has not changed since the last time, it's not generally changed since the last time you saw the project. It includes 4 senior apartment buildings located at the top of the screen with a total of 254 senior apartments, age restricted to 55 and over. And then a residential care facility containing 136 beds. An on-site total, there's 565 parking stalls that are made up of underground under each building, as well as surface stalls. So before I get into some of the details, the applicant took into consideration all of the Design Review Commission's comments from last time and has made some changes to the plans. And so what we're focusing on tonight is providing comments and feedback to the applicant on those changes that they have made, and also updating or revising, as the commission sees fit, any comments that they would like to move forward to Planning Commission and City Council. I'll just remind everyone that all the prior comments made at the previous study session will be forwarded along as part of the project record to Planning Commission and to City Council. So just a summary of the site changes. This page here was included in the application tonight. Let me switch to a mouse very quick. Hold on. Thank you. Yeah, this should work. Can we go back one?
You want to use the computer up here?
This seems to have died. Perfect, thanks. Okay, so this sheet here just shows a summary of the site plan changes. Some of the main significant ones, which I'll go into detail on, is the applicant has introduced or relocated a stair tower so that now each of the senior apartment buildings have access directly to the interior courtyards. Originally, they were at the ends of the buildings, and now they have a stair access going into each of the interior courtyard elements for all 4 of those senior apartment buildings. The applicant also removed the gatehouse kind of entry feature off the center driveway on Mitchell Drive, as well as some other site modifications, such as increasing the trash enclosure. And finally, they've added more seating areas and more benches along the existing open space areas and passive circulation routes, all as part of the comments received from the DRC at the last meeting. Thank you. I'll just throw this up just to remind everyone what the comments kind of were at the previous meeting. The DRC and the PC agreed with the DRC that they felt the buildings dominated the site plan, the circulation and landscape appeared secondary, that there was poor pedestrian connectivity, that the applicant should look at more synergy between the buildings and the amenities, and that the surface and vehicular parking was pushed to the periphery of the site, and that instead the site plan should consider how residents would access the project amenities, and that the project appeared maxed out. And so in response to that, the applicant has also provided this pedestrian circulation diagram. I'll highlight that this was the diagram that was presented to staff and included in your staff report tonight. Staff in the staff report did recommend that the applicant look at revising this diagram to clarify that not all of these access points are common access points, that some of them are from private residential units. So the applicant at a later date responded and did provide this amended pedestrian circulation diagram. I've included this tonight that we can discuss. I think the applicant also has it as part of their presentation. But I wanted to show it just to highlight that the blue now, so it's the same diagram, it's just been recolor coded. The blue indicates entry and exit points from a private unit, whereas the orange represents entry and exit points that residents of the building can all access. So you do see where the new orange entry and exit points are located, let's see if this works, right there, at various points to the interior courtyards. So that is the change in response to some of DRC's comments. And that also occurs this building and right here. I just want to show these images to show the revisions where they removed the gatehouse feature. The before image is shown here, and then you see the current where the primary entrance off Mitchell Drive is now much more open. And that was also a direct response to one of DRC's comments. And then some additional images of the amenity spaces. The applicant, as I mentioned, provided some additional benches and seating areas along the various amenity spaces, as well as just some additional images showing kind of the characteristic of what those spaces would be. And now moving on to some of the building, massing, and architecture related feedback. So again, the Design Review Commission and Planning Commission at the previous study sessions made the following comments. That the senior apartment buildings had large footprints with non-articulating facades, look at introducing a human scale to the buildings, suggested that maybe the 4 senior apartment buildings need not be the same size and shape to allow for additional pedestrian connectivity on site, and that commented on the fact that the buildings mimicked a typical apartment and should consider the unique users of the site. So in response, as I mentioned, the applicant did look at relocating the stair from the end of the corridor to more central. This not only, as I mentioned, allows pedestrian circulation into that courtyard, but it also allows a window to be added at the end of the courtyard. So the image on the left on your screen here, or sorry, the end of the corridor. The image on the left shows the ground floor condition with the new stairwell. And then for the floors above the ground floor, there is a new window added, which incorporates natural light into those corridors, again, in response to DRC's comments. The applicant also made several architectural changes to the building, as well as kind of simplified the color material palette. Every color is now associated with a material, so there's more uniformity to the facades, as well as introduced some new slanted metal roofs at the corners of the building and some other elements to help visually bring the kind of overall mass and height of the building down to, in terms of visually to the eye. The next few images I'll go through are just some before and afters. The before, which is what was previously presented to DRC, is always going to be on the top. So starting with building A on the screen, which is the rear senior apartment building. These are the 4-story building. You can see that the color and material palette, again, was simplified. More lighter tone colors were used on the facade, and the slanted metal roof elements at the corner, staff believes really does help bring kind of down the overall visual massing of the building without eliminating a floor or a unit. So all the similar changes did occur, so I won't repeat myself, but the kind of simplified color material palette, as well as those roof elements, those changes occur at all facades of all the senior apartment buildings. So here's another image of building A. I did highlight here just where that new stair tower element is shown on the facade. And now moving on to building B. This is the front senior apartment buildings. These are the 3-story buildings. So the same changes here. The other thing important to note that you can really see in this drawing is that all of the arched elements were eliminated. And so in the top image, you see where those 2 arched roof elements were located towards kind of the left of that elevation are now in the bottom image squared off. And that was, again, in direct response to DRC's comments. And another elevation here of building B. And the last image here. And then I'll just show, for context, some renderings showing the before and after. And I think in this one in particular, with the elimination of that gatehouse feature, as well as the introduction of those metal slanted roof at the corner, which you can see in that rear or second building in this current image, do kind of help lighten up the space and lighten up the feeling of those buildings a bit, as well as the simplified color material palette. So overall, staff is supportive of those changes, and I think it shows in this image. There are also some comments on the recreation building. Again, a before image is shown on the left-hand side. And kind of simplifying the architecture, introducing more symmetry, and adding a second window on that second level where there was that blank wall, and eliminating those arched elements again. So this shows the revisions to the recreation building on the right. And moving on to the residential care facility, the DRC did not have too many comments actually on the architecture of this building, except for, again, to look at eliminating those arched roof elements. So the entry porte cochere element has been modified, so it's now a squared off roof, as well as the roof element above that has also been squared off. And here is a before and after rendering showing that. So tonight, staff is recommending that the Design Review Commission evaluate the proposed changes and provide comments and a recommendation to the Planning Commission and eventually City Council for its full review of the requested entitlements. I'll just remind folks that this project in general does require a general plan amendment and a PD rezone and a specific plan amendment, all of which will be considered by the City Council. And if approved, will set the kind of overall development standards for the site. So the next step after Design Review Commission tonight is to move on to the Planning Commission for a study session and a recommendation sometime early 2022. And I'm here if you have any questions. I'll note the applicant did provide tonight a color and material board as well as a few material samples that we will pass around. And I do know the applicant team has a presentation for you as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Haley. Okay, does anyone have questions of staff?
I do.
Okay, Commissioner Gorney.
A couple questions. I know that it said in the staff report that the Planning Commission concurred, I think, with what Design Review said. They saw the same presentation that we got last time, right?
Yes, the exact same set of plans were presented to both
Okay.
commissions.
And do you think they're expecting to see significant changes in the building massing and the site layout from what they saw last time?
Their
Anywhere?
comments were similar in regards to the proposed massing. The applicant, though, has expressed that, they've made changes in response to the comments, in so much in a way that does not impact kind of the overall feasibility of the project or the overall kind of request that they're ultimately seeking from City Council.
I'm sure they'll get into the detail on that. Those are my only two questions. Thank you. One question.
Any other questions of staff?
Actually, I have one
Yes.
case. Are the 3 entrance exits required like from fire department, or is that just the applicant's design?
I do not believe they are required. I can confirm that for you, but I know that that has always been the applicant's design and intention.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions of staff? Okay, thank you. So do we have a presentation from the applicant?
Thank you. I think I'll use the. Use the mouse. Or, yes. Chair Case Commissioners, I'm Deb Carbo with Hall Equities Group. I'm joined here tonight by Oakmont Senior Living, so we can answer any questions. Tonight, we're going to talk about the Shadelands, the FAR that you just brought up, Mr. Gorney, the plan revisions, and our timeline. I'm going to try very hard not to repeat what Haley said, though, so that we don't waste any of your time. We all know that the Shadelands has had a long history of challenges. The current office R&D vacancy in the Shadelands is about 40%. Overall, it's about 22%. But what's important there is that office and R&D is really the only use consistent with the specific plan number 2 in BP zoning. COVID's made the problem worse, and there's really not been a comprehensive plan update in the Shadelands in 50 years, other than the minor changes that we made in 2016 in collaboration with the PBID and the city. So every new project that's been constructed in the Shadelands, including the following, have required PD or zoning changes. And that included originally medical, education, child care, sports training, retail, and the other senior housing project out there. A couple of articles recently, the former Sunset Office Plaza in Livermore, it's been experiencing many of the same challenges as the Shadelands. And they recently announced progress on leasing only after the city broadened the zoning uses allowed. And then I'm also seeing, I'm sure you guys are too, that many of the office campus projects are starting to add housing. With this work from home, things are changing. I do want to address FAR because we feel like we did a really good job of incorporating all of your comments, but with the exception of FAR. And I want to point a couple things out to you. Our original request to City Council in November of 2019 was for urbanization of the property, and they voted to allow us to proceed. These next 2 slides are actually the slides that I used at the City Council meeting in November of 2019, and I showed 288 age-restricted apartments. And then at the end, you know, I always have my request, and we said that the PD would provide for an increased FAR to 1.3. Again, reminding them that Sequoia is 2.0. And the city council voted to allow us to proceed at that FAR. So it's important to keep the unit count up. That said, the current plan is at 254 units, so we have already reduced the count by 13%. And the reason for that was we felt that the front buildings, the B buildings, going to 3 stories would be a nice transition into the site. So the 5 buildings closest to Mitchell are all 3-story, and then you transition into A, which is 4-story. It's at a lower grade. You, at the last meeting, mentioned that most of you folks on the commission were really in favor of Viamonte. So we pulled those plans and did a side-by-side comparison to Viamonte. They're 4 stories on all street fronts, 1.8 FAR versus 1.1, 45% lot coverage versus 38. Their setbacks are less. The dwelling unit density is greater. The corridor widths are less than our corridors, and they do have some corridors that don't have windows at the end, which we've incorporated. And so overall, lower height, less FAR, and so we think this project fits in very nicely. So let's go into some of the changes. I won't talk about that one. We're going to work from the outside in. Some of these are basically a repeat showing the before and after, but basically it was the color palette, reducing the number of colors. We introduced new exterior finishes, segmented facade and lap siding with variable reveal. We added pitched metal roofing to introduce contrast and variation. We replaced the arches with flat and parapet type roofs. We got a lot of comments on the arches last time. We adjusted the elements to coordinate better, removed stucco, and introduced hardy texture panels that have become popular with modern architectural styles. These are other before and after. The rec center, same thing. Haley already went through it, but we really are pleased with these changes as a result of your comments. And Mr. Gorney, we did get rid of that elephant in the tutu. The residential care facility, really the only change was the porte-cochere. It changed the footprint just a bit. Regarding site plan and circulation, I won't reiterate this slide. Haley already went into it. It's important to note that there's underground parking under all of the units, so it's convenient for the residents, and that pertains to all the buildings. This I wanted to point out. We've been going back and forth with Contra Costa County Fire Protection District since our last meeting, actually, and we had quite a few challenges with them. Ultimately, they wanted us to eliminate the landscaping under the windows. They wanted free ladder access and for us to make everything under the windows ground cover. And we knew that wasn't going to fly with you, and so Oakmont decided to go ahead and change the construction type from 5A to 3A. So regarding the question about fire access, they have approved the plan. So we do have an approval from the fire department, subject to building permits, but the access, water, all those things are approved by them. This is the pedestrian connectivity. In addition to the 10-foot sidewalk across the entire frontage, we increased all the interior sidewalks to 5 feet. That was a change that before we were here last time, however. Each ground floor unit has direct access through their patio to either the front walk or the courtyard. The upper floors have access to the courtyard through the relocated stairwell. We added benches and seating throughout the grounds. We added additional access points to the rec center, which was your suggestion, and we removed that gatehouse and revised the driveway with Chair Case's comment, actually. This is just the how it's it's a perfect use in the Shadelands, environmentally friendly, and we think that while seniors always want to have a car, they aren't really going to need it as much just because of the uses in the Shadelands, and there's great access throughout the Shadelands. Now the interior, this is the before and after, so I blew it up. Haley already went into this, but we relocated that stair tower so that we have daylight and natural light on every corridor in the apartments, which we think is a wonderful improvement. Regarding the apartment amenities, this is a collage of Oakmont's existing product, and it just gives you an idea of the quality of their product, and yet it's still affordable. The exterior amenities include lush landscaping, pet parks, sports courts, bocce courts, exterior restrooms, arbors with seating, patios with seating. In the B building, there's a putting green, a wall, a fountain wall, and patio with outside dining there right at the fountain wall. On the rec center, honestly, we feel like this is like a country club without the golf course, and we think the rec center is the clubhouse. We can go into it more if you have questions. I have more slides that we can come back to if you'd like. But we did add additional access points per your suggestions. We've been working on this since November of 2019, and we've overcome many serious challenges. So we're in it about 25 months. We believe the project is much better as a result of all your comments and these changes, and we respectfully request that you forward the project to the Planning Commission with your recommendation for approval. With that, we'll answer any questions.
Great, thank you. Do any commissioners have questions of the applicant? Yes, Commissioner Carling.
Yeah, thank you. Probably my biggest comment last time was about all the parking along the periphery of the property and the way that just looks. And I'm glad you mentioned the comparison between the Viamonte and this project. And let me side note it with, I generally support the project, but this is my one little pet peeve on the project. The Viamonte does not have parking along the periphery. So the setbacks are smaller, for sure. But I live pretty close to there, and we walk by it all the time, and we're not that far from where this is going to go. It's really nice to walk by the Viamonte and see the nice building and the landscape in front of it. Having to look at parking around it, I think the comment I used last time is that it makes it sort of like a Summerfeld Suites hotel type of feel, and I don't think that's what you're trying to go for. So can you maybe comment as to why nothing was changed?
Sure.
Related to that?
I'll tell you exactly what's going on there. Viamonte doesn't have nearly the amount of parking that we do. And honestly, Viamonte leased parking from us at JGI on this site until recently. And actually, I think they might still have a lease going on. So they have a lot less parking than we do. The reason I wanted to point out the 555 stalls total, the majority of those are underground. But there is surface parking because guests always want to park, on the surface and, have something that's easy to get to and that sort of thing. So part of it has to do with providing parking that meets Oakmont's requirement. And they've built about 60 of these projects, and they park it, honestly, per multifamily code for Walnut Creek. And so it's really just an area for guest parking, and then the underground parking is for the units themselves.
Yeah, I think the follow-on question I had last time, so I'll just ask it again, is
Sure.
Why can't you push the buildings out to the periphery of the property and kind of hide some of that parking somehow on the inside?
Well, I guess my point is, you mentioned that when you walk around Viamonte, when you walk down Mitchell, which will have this beautiful 10-foot sidewalk, you aren't going to see the parking necessarily. You almost need to drive in to see the parking. You do see some of it. And actually, Viamonte does have some parking along the one side toward the, they have parking right next to the building, and then you've got one of the entrances to the orchards is all parking that's on the side of Viamonte. So I feel like our parking, we didn't want to compromise our unit count and start over. We'd done a lot of work with engineering and the storm water retention and that sort of thing. And so, again, we reduced, we took off one level of the building, which we thought is something that we could live with, but reconfiguring the buildings would get us back to square one.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Killian.
Well, let me just, before I get to my main questions, kind of piggyback on Charles on this parking thing. There's a couple, I was kind of curious, you have quite a lot of parallel parking. I was kind of curious why there couldn't be in the, I guess it'd be the northwest corner behind the residential care facility. You have about 4 or 5 straight-in parking, and then you go to some parallel parking. I was wondering, there might have been an opportunity there to keep the, I mean, you can stay there. To the left of the residential care facility, it seemed like there might have been an opportunity to carry on the pull-in parking, eliminate the parallel parking on both sides of the street, and maybe again pull back the sidewalk away from the buildings and have more landscaping. And just areas like that, you know, where there could have been some opening up of the parking.
Are you talking about this memory care area here?
No, move your cursor up just a little bit, right
Oh,
there.
This?
Yes.
Oh, okay. We're trying to maximize, I guess I can let Oakmont address that. Oh, the fire, we have to maintain a certain width for fire access. But some of that parallel parking, we did look at it because there was some, we looked at that as well as ADA parking that Mr. Gorney brought up as well. And they feel like the parallel, it's just a few parallel, so it's not significant number of parallel. And that's the extent of it, actually.
It looks like you got them around the side, but just one little minor question, it kind of bugged me. On your most northerly exit, you have a handicap parking on the most northern side of the parking. Why is that?
Are you talking about over on Building A up here?
Building
Oops.
B?
Okay, whoops, sorry. I'll get back there.
On the, I guess it'd be the northeast corner of Building B? Just curious.
Oh, by the rec center?
No, above Building 1? B1?
I'm sorry, this is, B1?
Yes.
Oh, by the entrance to the garage?
No, your most northerly exit out of the project?
Oh, here,
Right there. Now, go to the left a little bit.
okay.
A little bit more, a couple more spaces,
Yeah,
right there. What's that handicap parking place doing there?
Is that a handicap stall? Is it?
Yes.
Yes.
I will have to ask. You want to look at that? Is that, are you
It's
concerned
just
about?
it just bugged.
There's an entrance there.
We did look at ADA, and we actually have more ADA parking than required by code.
I know, but why is it there where you have to cross the street? as
Yeah,
opposed
it's a
to
good
just putting it
point.
there?
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
a
that's just a
valid-
very minor thing, so I
Yeah,
was
that's a
just,
valid point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me go back to more, I wasn't here on the first meeting.
I know.
And so when I was reading through the first staff report and the comments about the changes, and then reviewing this, I was kind of expecting, again, harking back to Joseph's question, some more fundamental changes. And for example, I was wondering why you didn't maybe rotate the buildings even to where the access into each of these courtyards lined up to where you had an access to where you, the users would feel the connectivity to all three spaces. I didn't see that. And so was there any attempt, other than saying, you know, we've already had costs for engineering and architecture, so we're just going to make these kind of cosmetic changes? I mean, what was the direction for?
Yeah, sure.
Hi there, I'm Comron with Oakmont Senior Living. First of all, thanks for your catch on the handicap spot. I think we can probably move that and make it usable. In terms of pivoting the building, so we're very, very limited in terms of how we can change the footprints because of the underground parking. So if you start moving the underground parking in ways that are diagonal, you have to now find approaches for coming down and into and access points on the underground parking. So we need enough room away from the building so that the descent into the parking garage isn't so severe or accessed in a way that's an odd angle. So really, we had these large underground, and we did this because this is a senior project. And A, we want to maximize, of course, landscaping. We always do that. But B, we don't want the elements. So we have an elevator directly from the underground parking, so that residents are covered at all times, and they don't have to, walk around a building or through a courtyard in order to, bring their groceries home.
Okay. What about other possibilities of then to open up this connectivity to where you maybe remove 4 or 5 units, the whole side of one building, and then maybe go up somewhere else where you keep the same amount? Again, what I'm concerned about is, for example, B1, that courtyard is kind of narrow, but that's really for them, and I don't see people in A1 really being invited over or have any reason to go there. So I see 3 isolated community plaza areas, not something that's for the entire site. And the way the buildings are located, they're kind of acting as a barrier between the shared, or what could be these shared spaces.
Sure. We struggled desperately between essentially city council telling us that they want this density and this urbanization, also the cost of building, which is skyrocketing, and so trying to maximize units so that it stays feasible to actually do this, especially with underground parking, given the cost. It's up to around $30,000 per spot right now. So, we really tried to respect the mandate from council, and I won't call it a mandate, I think that's way too strong, but they had a desire and voted to see this type of urbanization, or this type of density. And then to try to incorporate your comments in a way that didn't conflict. And I'm telling you guys, we've been struggling mightily. We do have, and I will say this unabashedly, we have a much better product now than we had before you guys made your comments, and especially with regards to the architecture, the elevations. We're thrilled with it as it stands in terms of the look, the feel.
But let me go back to my question.
Yeah,
I mean,
please.
is it possible, for example, building B2, what if that went to 4 stories and enabled you to reduce that footprint to allow a better connection to the rec center and over to building A1?
We're also, we have height limit issues. So we don't want to exceed height limits, and because the site drops down, we had that at 4 stories. We didn't want to test the height limit. We thought perhaps we could get it there, but we did not want to test that theory, and so we reduced it, the 4th floor from both of those buildings. We also think, transitionally speaking, it's going to look much better when you're walking along Mitchell. In fact, because of the change in elevation, you're going to have the building heights of A1 and A2 buildings be very, very close to the building heights that are of the B buildings that are along Mitchell, just because of the slope of the site over the full length.
Getting back to Charles' concern about the perimeter parking,
Yeah.
did you try, if you don't need the 3 exits, is it possible to move the whole group of buildings toward the perimeter and opening up the center core area for, again, a more common area and connectivity to these open spaces rather than having three isolated.
I'm not sure I understand. So one more time, can you walk me through that?
Well, you have your perimeter parking along, I'll call it the northern edge.
Uh-huh.
If those was eliminated, and the buildings A2, or the group of buildings A and B were pushed up more
Right.
toward the property line.
So again, we have a huge problem with the underground footings, the footings for the underground parking. So you have these very large footings that actually extend into that parking lot, that drive aisle there.
How far?
I couldn't tell you right now. What's that? Oh. And fire, we needed circulation and aerial access, I forgot, which is,
So I think for our questions, we're supposed to be questioning the changes, the revisions that we've seen. And I don't know that we want to keep questioning the site plan decisions and instead reacting to what is presented to us this evening.
Okay, let me go on to the park, or the circulation. Was there any concern, this is more of a senior, 55 and then 65. Again, adding all these gates and everything to their private patios, I'm just wondering if that's really not the appropriate thing to do, to where, you know, the owners of those units might have then security concerns, to where that may not be appreciated. I mean, what's your research or your?
well, we've done, this was mentioned before, we've done about 65 of these throughout California, Washington, Nevada. We've never had an issue. There's also the entrance, which is gated. And so it is a fairly secure community. You have a ton of defensible space. You got eyes on most of these areas. And so,
No, I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about is the feeling that whether they will ever be used, and the idea if the seniors living in this unit, you know, and just another exit, and some of them are just 10 feet away from a stranger's car being parked outside their unit.
Sure.
And whether that would ever be used anyway, going out their back patio.
we have great utilization of the patios. I think it's important to remember this is 55 and over, which is a Fair Housing Act designation. 55 is not that old at all. So, I mean, I think that they'll be utilized very similarly to how a normal apartment complex will utilize them.
Okay. Let me just move on to a few other things on the pool area. I was just questioning whether you had room, by your own graphics, it appeared you don't have room for circulation around the pool. Again, I'm just wondering, with the patio furniture there and everything, again, with older citizens and everything, it appears that, they might be falling into the pool, trying to walk around the pool. And where you added the fire pit, it seems like it was just added in, and you really don't have usable space. So I question again, it looks like a nice, pretty picture, but again, for your users, and, whether this is the appropriate design or not. And again, in your research, are these users mainly there for lap swimming and, exercise and more groups as opposed to more of a resort type of pool?
Again, we've done an awful lot of these. We've done pools at every single one that we've done. So we have extensive experience in designing and building these types of facilities. We've never had a problem yet. I don't anticipate that we will. We are one of the largest developers of this type of product in the country, exceedingly well regarded in the industry. And we have a really, really quality product that is, again, we're award-winning. We've been recognized. I can assure you that this will be no different, and we will absolutely build this to the standards that we're known for.
Okay. I'm just going to ask some random questions here.
Sure.
So this is I guess a podium over parking, essentially?
Not podium, it's underground.
It's underground. So there's, are we going to see any grills or ventilation from the garage, or is it a?
There are two towers, but they're incorporated into the architecture, so you're not seeing.
Okay, so there's no grills along the bottom elevation?
I don't believe so.
Or anything of that, so it's going to be okay. Are all parking, are they all having with car overhangs to where they're going into the sidewalks? You had a diagram showing that the parking, basically to get the full 18 feet, you had a 2.5-foot overhang. Does that occur in all the parking spaces?
Maybe you can reference a slide, or I'm not sure. I'm sorry.
It's one of your details. You showed typical parking, and you dimensioned it, and it just showed, the car overhang. So I'm just asking, is that typical for all your parking?
I would imagine so. Yeah, we are generous with our parking because we very much understand that when we're not, our residents become very unhappy. And so, yeah, they're standard stalls. I think they're 19 feet deep.
Okay,
18, sorry.
all right. Why a sliding gate and not swing gates?
Just in terms of the utilization of space, we wanted to incorporate it. It'll flow along with the gate that's already pre-existing.
Gate that's pre-existing is a brand-new project.
Sorry. Once it's built, if it's built, there will be a gate there, and it'll slide along that gate as sliding gates do. So it won't take up additional real estate that we can use for,
I'm just
landscaping.
curious, a 30-foot sliding gate, first of all, it's going to
Beautification.
take quite a bit of time. It's more, wear and tear on the motor and stuff. It just seemed, it seemed like you had room for swing gates.
We've used both, but we will be keeping the gate open during the day. So we're not trying to restrict access, but
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a roof garden? Again, on one of your exhibits, you were showing some patios, and then you show a roof garden. I couldn't find that anywhere or any
That
No.
was the previous plan.
previous plan.
previous plan.
Yeah.
Okay. And I couldn't tell from this, there are a couple of heritage oak trees along the front of the residential care facility, and it appears from the color diagram that they could remain, but on the chart, it says that they're all to be removed. Could you clarify that?
I believe it has to do with footings again. You're going under and extending, and you're essentially encroaching on the root system.
Okay, and the footings from what? You're out on almost on the Mitchell Drive.
I'll introduce you to our landscape architect and perhaps one of
Yeah.
our designers, but
This has got a,
It's that kind of olive grove just straight across from the porte cochere to the right. It appears those would be the three
I-
oak trees.
I will tell you that we work really, really hard to save any existing trees that we possibly can because they're a huge asset. We understand that, and
You say 4 out of 200 or something, but
Through the chair, if we could focus our comments on the revisions that we're looking at tonight, that would be.
oh, we're not, okay, all right, well then, I will, that was it then.
thank you for your comments.
Commissioner Valia.
Yes, I do have a couple of questions. The first one is, the occupants of buildings A and B are using the residential care facility, right? I mean, they go there, it's recreational care facility for everybody.
oh, the rec facility.
Yeah.
Yes, everybody in the 4
Yeah,
buildings.
so how do they come from, how do they cross the street? I mean, it's all pavement, there's no indication as to where I can cross. Shouldn't there be something in terms of your design that shows how easy it is to move from north to south?
You may be referencing the assisted living facility,
I think.
because that's the only way to cross, that's the only street you would need to cross in order to
Right,
access.
right.
Yeah, the
right.
assisted living facility is fully amenitized on its own, and it is, it's completely, its own product, it's on a different APN, it's completely separate.
Oh, it's completely separate.
Completely separate, yeah, there is no, they're two different, essentially two different projects.
So-
It has movie theaters, it has hair salons.
Right, I mean, it's so
doctor's
attractive,
office.
but so then the people from A and B cannot use it?
No,
Oh, got you.
no, I'm sorry, A and B are the 3 and 4 story apartments.
Right,
That rec center is for them.
It's
The pool,
independent.
Only them, only for the apartments. Once you cross the street to the residential care facility, which is a 3-story residential care facility, that is amenitized completely separately and is amenitized just for those residents.
no, for the A and B residents, right?
No,
Oh.
only for the residents of the residential care facility.
Oh, got you,
Yeah, so
okay.
they're essentially separate
Movie
projects.
theaters and all this good stuff, and it's only for them,
Absolutely,
okay.
absolutely.
Now, the other thing is that You keep talking about the massing and how you change the massing. I don't get it. I don't see how you change the massing of the buildings. I saw you changed colors, you changed some of the features, you changed the roofs, but I don't perceive it. I see the same mass.
We're not making that claim at all. What we're trying to say is that we've updated the architecture to hopefully, and staff has helped us work on creating less impact visually. We did not, again, you know, it's been a lot of difficulty in trying to balance what our original directive was from city council in retaining an urban feel and a number of units, given, I think they recognize the housing crisis we're in and how desperately units are needed. They have directed us, yes, this is the FAR we want, this is the density we want. Now we're trying to do our best to incorporate your comments and what your visions are for the project with their directive, and this is, you know, this is what we've got.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have other questions
Yeah.
on the revisions?
I
Yeah.
do.
Commissioner.
I got one for Haley first. Did council direct the FAR on the building? I mean, I know that they were given a project with a certain number of units, but they didn't actually direct it to have to meet that, did they?
So what was presented to council and what staff reviewed back in 2019 was a request to amend the business park zoning and the business park general plan to allow residential. As part of the applicant's presentation, they did present that site plan and they did present their kind of general scope for a project at 2800 Mitchell, but staff never, in staff report or in staff's presentation, or any of the material staff reviewed, included any sort of site-specific project.
Okay.
So council was made aware of it, but it wasn't included in any staff analysis.
Can I get the amenities picture? You can respond to that. It's not really a question, but
Getting there, sorry.
no problem. That's all right. That one's a funny one. There it is.
There we go.
Back
Back?
apartment amenities. Oh, no, I see that one right there.
Oh, okay, sure.
So I'm just looking at this. I see that in the residential care facility, you walk in, there's a nice big two-story entry, and that building has various, you know, spaces, theaters, and everything that are shared. I don't see any of those spaces in the apartment buildings. I mean, I walk in the apartment building, there's a door, trash, elevator, hallway. There's no place to sit and meet with people. There's zero amenity in the building. And I think one of the things we were talking about last time was that connection to the courtyard. So we were thinking, if you're gonna go out to the courtyard, what you're giving us is basically a fire stair, like a little narrow fire stair with a fire door, and that'll take you to another fire door to get to the outside. I think what we were really hoping was something that was a little more open, that you could sit there and be inside but outside, and there was more of a connectivity. And what you're saying is you can't do that because you need to get this many units on the site and can't change it. Am I hearing that right?
We have already changed, and I'll let you talk to this, but in order to accommodate that removing or moving the stair tower, we changed the mix, and they got rid of some 2 bedrooms, and so we have
You
more
did?
1 bedrooms now
Okay.
as a result. We feel like the exterior, those courtyards are a really special area, and they have all kinds of seating, dining, fountain wall, those types
Right.
of things. So
But in the building, on the first, any of the levels, there's no place in those buildings for people to get together and do anything. I mean, it reminds me of my cousin's apartment in Warsaw. I mean, it's like, it's a slot and there's a bunch of doors. So there's no interior usable space.
I'll
And
try
I'm
not to
concerned
take-
about that as a livability thing.
I'll try not to take too much offense.
No, it's fine, yeah.
I bet it's a really nice apartment in Warsaw, yes? So the whole point of the rec center.
Yeah,
is
the rec
as
center
a-
is the thing. Okay.
It's a focal point where everybody comes.
Okay.
And they have a central location where, and it's spectacular. There's a movie
Mm-hmm.
theater, there's,
Good.
you know, there's huge meeting spaces. You can rent out areas for catering and for throwing parties. There's fitness center, there's
Okay.
there's the
art room, there's a, yeah, we have,
card room,
Good, so it's in that building. That's what
Absolutely.
I'm
That
trying
is
to
the focal
establish.
point. We want to draw people
There it
actually
is.
out of the buildings and into the outdoor space and into this rec center, so
Mm-hmm.
we have a communal area.
Okay,
Give me a sense of the square footage of that building. I just want to get an idea of how big
We
that
have
is.
Boys. Sorry, give us 1 second. So just under 16,000 feet.
Look,
yeah.
really, okay.
We, there's a yoga studio
Yeah.
where that overlooks
No,
the
that
pool.
sounds good.
We always over amenitize. We realize what people want, what people are looking for, and we also know what kind of prices there are around here, and people expect a certain level of amenity. So
Did you say 16 or 60?
16.
16.
1-6, thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah.
Could you go back to that picture again that I was looking at?
My left or right
I
here.
just wanted to, that's an important one to me, okay. So these spaces are, the apartment's one thing, but the putting green and the outdoor spaces are similar to what's here.
Yes.
And that kind of bottom right picture that has a nice big two-story thing, that's more in the rec center, not in the buildings themselves.
Exactly.
Okay,
And that's actually an entry, that's an entry of an assisted living, one of our assisted living facilities, very similar to what you'll see in this assisted living as well.
like I said, these are very beautiful. And that's one of the things I will say again, and this is a question, did you look at other ways to make that connection to the courtyard, which we thought was very important to be able to get out of the buildings, to be something less than a 3-foot hallway with a fire stair?
Yeah, first of all, our hallways are pretty generous.
That's not a hallway, that's along the fire stair.
Oh, you're talking about the stairs? I don't know.
Yeah.
So they're 5.5 feet wide. Yeah, I mean,
That one.
not that, yeah.
Okay, so I just want to make sure, that is did you look at other ways to make that, I mean.
We did.
and I guess you did, but, it didn't-
Well, I mean, what we did is we actually lost, we lost units, valuable units, and replaced them.
You didn't lose any, you lost bigger units, right? Maybe.
Yeah, we had larger units, and we downsized all those units to accommodate the moving of the stairwell.
And losing a unit on that floor is just going to make the project not work.
Not at all, but if you lose one unit, you lose 4 units.
I know.
Which
Only a lower floor. Oh, you say, yeah, you're right, every building, you're right.
yeah, every building, and then you're repeating it. That's 16, well,
Okay.
14, but which we looked at. We absolutely did look at all of that. This was the way that we thought was the best way to balance kind of needs versus your comments.
Okay.
And again, better project for the comments as the way we incorporated them at least.
I don't have a lot of other questions. The gate, when you come in through the gate, does everybody have a clicker to be able to open the gate when they come in? Or are they going to line up there with, I mean?
Yeah, so
It's
it'll
only for the residents, so if I'm visiting, how do I get in?
it'll be open
It'll
during
be open. Oh,
during the days, during the day, so from, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. or whatever.
okay.
And after that, it'll have restricted access. I'm not sure how exactly we do the access, but it'll be some new technological something.
Okay. Is your architect here?
Unfortunately, he's sick, but
Okay.
we
Oh,
have
bummer.
our design staff, so.
Okay, I got I got a question about the architecture. We didn't like the arch over the top of the what do you call it, the residential care facility.
Sure.
And what happened was, and some of the ones were ill proportioned on some of the towers and things.
Uh-huh.
What we lost is every arch in the entire building. And we had a concern at one point about some colors, and what we got was, now every single building is the same color. I was just wondering why it swung that far, as opposed to
Yeah,
more subtle approach to our comment.
we just had your comments. We
Yeah.
tried our best to kind of read between the lines. Staff was instrumental, but we can only, we had a limited, we're trying to, anticipate what you
Okay.
were asking for and looking for, and
Okay.
this is as best as we could do.
Okay, I wanted to ask him, but that's fine,
Yeah,
thank
yeah.
you. I don't have any other questions right now.
Okay, other questions of our applicant? Great, thank you. So at this time, we'll open it up for public comment. And we'll do a little pause to check on our Zoom portal as well. And if you are in the Zoom, you can use the raise hand feature, I believe, to let us know you'd like to make a comment.
I'm seeing none. Maybe another 30 seconds.
Okay, give it just another second or two.
Still no raised hands.
Okay, so at this point, we'll bring it back to the commission. So our directive this evening is to consider the revisions that have been made and ideally recommend it to city council to review for making revisions to the zoning and the general plan. At that point, then the city knows the development standards that need to be upheld. So I feel like the one thing I want to say is, I know there was a lot of comments we made that didn't get specifically addressed on this reiteration, but I do think it is not to a point where I feel concerned about city council getting an opportunity to decide if it meets those criteria under which staff can review it to a different development standard level. Because I think it's difficult for them to review it to the level we'd like to see things reviewed without knowing which categories it's going to fall into.
But I'm assuming that means that the site plan and the building massing is locked in at that point.
I think that one of the things I would like to see is if when we do have our comments this evening, if we can do some that are like, these are the minor things that we would like to have considered revisited, and then maybe have a bucket that is emphasized for us when it goes to city council, that it was like, these were the bigger things that we want to bring to your attention, and should they choose to raise those to the level, then they can at that point. But I'm open to suggestions if you guys have other ways we'd like to solve it.
I guess I have a concern. I've seen this happen, that if some of our design concerns aren't addressed now, the project goes in whatever way it goes, and then it comes back to us, and basically, then our concerns aren't addressable because it's gone too far down the road in terms of design and everything. And I do have specific designs that aren't addressing, what happened before, but it relates to, the whole, I guess, the concept of what this project is. So I just kind of wonder at what point and will we address our designs concerns? And my concern is when we do that, does it matter at that point? Because if, for example, say if this is the site plan that's been approved or will be approved and it comes back to us, that's it, then, why bother? So.
Are there other suggestions or ideas of ways that we feel like we could provide our comments and allow it to proceed for city council and planning commission review?
Well, the way I would see us doing it is, like if I was phrasing it for myself, I think all these things are great, but I can't get to the full support part without this being addressed. Because I fear probably similar to Brian here, I feel that if we go in too soft, if we strongly believe in something that we'd like to see changed, if we don't go in strong with that comment to the planning commission, and then it's not gonna make it to the city council and they won't think we have a big issue with it. If we go, yeah, we support it, we wish they would do this. I would rather say, we support it, but only if they address this issue somehow. So that's my thought.
That's a good way to put it, actually.
And so is that a site plan issue? Is that a massing issue? Are those two one and the same at a certain point? Is it the parking? Because there's a couple things that I think are related, and I think the best we can try to capture what our want is, the better, right?
When I look at what you said, address the revisions. Personally, if I really had to go big picture, I don't think the revisions are adequate. I think there really is very little revision. I think it's basically colors and exterior materials. I mean, that's it. I don't think there's any significant changes to the site building, to the site plan and the building design, which we talked about last time. We talked about the massing the buildings. We're being told we can't change it.
Right.
But what we're looking at is it's 100% efficiency. It's maxed out 100% as to what you can fit on a slot, which is what we said last time. And if if everybody here is okay with that, then we say, okay, move it forward. And I think this is the site plan we're gonna get back. And I do believe that. And so I listen to the applicants, and I hear what you're saying about efficiency. But I just think it's over efficiency. You know, this whole idea of being able to walk between buildings and have some kind of connection to that central space without having to like walk around the building, I don't think is addressed adequately. And so that is a concern of mine. You know, there's, you know, so that's like one of the big ones.
Right.
I would say. You know, we talked about stepping the building, you know, I know you said height restriction, but, you know, whether building B2 could have been a little taller and, you know, some other stepping in the top, you know, I don't think the height restriction is the issue. It wasn't addressed. And again, from the very beginning, on the last, Brian, you weren't here last time, but essentially, should have been a study session. And we had a full set of drawings, and it's very hard at that point to rethink the whole thing. And what we really got back, basically, is the same thing back again with some minor changes. And so, if everybody is okay with that, then I think we were okay to send it forward, and we can talk about some of the smaller things. But I don't think it's going to be, this doesn't seem to me like an award-winning design, and I don't think it is a particularly great space for people inside. And I think that's unfortunate, but the inside isn't really our business.
We can, if I may, we can, if we could make comment, what we need to do is separate our comments out on the revisions. And then we can make, what will happen is you can strengthen some of those recommendations from last meeting and at the end of this session, and and take a informal vote to make sure that those issues make it on the list that gets to the Planning Commission and the council. And however you want to formulate those pursuant to Commissioner Krelling, then you can do that. But we should be really tidy about it.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so then let's organize our feedback first on revisions. And we can organize that. Where are my list of revisions? Somewhere.
There was yeah,
Sorry, forgive me, I had that somewhere.
there was a great list on there of the revisions we asked for.
Is that available on our PowerPoint, Haley? Sorry.
I mean, it seems to me, if you know, the building massing, the size of, I'm okay with the 3-story buildings in the front and 4-story in the back. I think stepping it from the street back, that's okay. I actually don't even mind the parking around the outside, because it does give a certain amount of separation. You don't have to park in a parking deck if you don't want to, and that doesn't bother me in the least. The biggest thing we asked about last time was to make those courtyards more usable, and what we got was this, you know, little hallway that's a fire stair to be able to connect. And I really wish that's the one thing I would have liked to have seen strengthened, that each one of these buildings connects on a lower level in a more holistic way, so people can get out. I wish you could go all the way through. I mean, if I live way out in the corner of building A2, I gotta like walk out of the building and all the way around the building to get to the rec center. And it's just, that's not a very pleasant way to go. And so I think you could poke a hole in A1 and connect the pool area to the courtyard, and you could poke a hole in building B2 and connect its courtyard back to that pool. And all of a sudden, as Brian was saying earlier, you have this connect between all the spaces outside. You don't have to walk around the outside of the building on a little 5-foot sidewalk with a 4-story building next to you to be able to get there. And that's what we talked about in the last meeting. So for me, that would be critical.
Okay, so the revision of the pedestrian connectivity plan illustrating it doesn't feel like it really integrates the courtyards into the building experience with that indoor-outdoor, other than the perimeter that's surrounded by the parking lot.
I mean, you know, for, like I said, you know, B1 and A2 could be a smaller connection just to get you out there, but I think that going through the buildings would be a lot nicer. Now, I don't know if the other commissioners agree, but that would be a significant one for me. I like the fact that there's glass at the end of the hallways now, that they moved the stair. I think it's starting to work. I think that's good. You know, originally, it was all just kind of, you know, dark in there, and I think that is a really good improvement to have done that. I think some of the areas outside, the added benches and places to rest along the way, it's a good move.
And the revised portico-share element.
Yeah.
We like that.
I like the flat hats on the towers. Like, that's really well done.
Eliminating the arched roofs, openings, and awnings. Incorporated new exterior finishes with the pitched metal roofing at the corners,
Yeah, it's okay. It's different.
plus minus. Modified cornice elements. So they're
Elephants.
all uniform with associated facade materials.
They seem okay. Yeah, I think. Everybody
Others
else?
weigh in too, if I'm.
Yeah. It doesn't show
Okay.
much.
Let me disagree a little bit with the architecture.
Mhm.
My, is that there's no rhythm to it. It just seems to be a series of blocks that are all put together.
Yeah, I was gonna say that,
That's
'cause
my
the other one
impression.
didn't have that. The other one had more breakup in materials a little bit, and some of the, like, some of the four-story pieces had another color at the top. So they had like a cap on them. And I was gonna say that in the comments, that I think some of the elevations are better and some of them are worse.
Right.
And so I think that sort of, but that's color and material, which I think, as you said, is something that after, city council could be addressed.
Right.
But I agree with you, Brian, I do.
Okay. So my vote, I'm not enamored with the architecture or the changes, if that's part of the revisions. I agree with you on the circulation, but again, I go a little bit further, because when you look at what it does, for example, B1, you have a private courtyard coming out 5 feet away, you have supposedly this gathering of a patio, it's two tables. Well, who wants two strangers sitting out there 5 feet away from your private,
Yeah.
and all their outdoor spaces are very small. You really don't have any large gathering spaces where you could have more than two tables. And even the tables graphically really don't have circulation around them. So again, I think this is kind of wishful thinking. It's more of a pretty picture rather than a circulation that while physically it may work, I don't think it does anything to enhance the livability of these projects.
But we talked about that in the first meeting, about trying to open those spaces up so there was more space in there and you weren't just surrounded by building on all sides.
Separating the building.
Separating the build, but of course, with that many units and with the parking, it's jammed in there. There's very little area to move.
Yeah.
Well, I guess if there's, in theory, if it was separated, the underground parking area becomes larger, and then you don't need as much surface parking.
That's a
No.
tricky one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, having not been a study session at the beginning, we're sort of locked into
Right.
a lot of this, and you're right, you move that over and it's $1 million worth of engineering, and
Exactly.
changing things.
Yeah. And construction.
But again, that's my point. We shouldn't be afraid to say that just because they've gone that far and spent $1 million in engineering, and if it's not a good design, we shouldn't be afraid to say it's not a good design.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. Personally, I think if those inner courtyards were designed better and there was that connectivity through the building, I would have less heartache about it. And I'm trying to give them the benefit of the doubt on the number of units. I mean, I think, there's a lot of ways you could make a better layout. Like you were saying, Brian, we can almost see all the way through, which would not cost any more. We're told it's going to cost more, and I don't think it really would. So, but again, I'm trying to get it to the point where we can move them forward if the rest of the commission feels that way, but an insistence that these things we talked about last time on the usability of courtyards and the connectivity between happens.
Okay, and just one other one we didn't talk much about, the revised building facade of the rec building. So there was, it looked like there were additional windows. I saw more of a porch patio veranda experience.
It's a vast improvement.
Maybe was there.
I think it's a vast
I
improvement.
think it's significantly better as well. Okay, so we like that revision. Simplified color palette.
Again, the way the colors are applied to the building, I think was almost in some ways better in the first one. Because again, we have 4-story wall with one color on it and one type of window. And before, it went up 3, and then it had another material at the top, which kind of gives a cap. So I think that needs to be revised and reviewed and worked on, but I think that's something that can come back to this commission at a later time. Thoughts?
I'm good with that. My main thing is the buildings being so close together
Yeah.
and the circular parking all around the buildings. Those are the two things that really bother me.
Brian was on that one too, yeah.
I thought I heard a question of materials. Do you want to discuss materials, the ones we saw this evening? Are we,
Colors look fine to me, stone looks fine to me. I think it could work with those materials.
I think so
It's
as
just how
well.
they're applied and how they're detailed. And I think also on another one that we'll look at later is light fixtures. I mean, those stone columns at the porte cochere thing going in, if it's got a beautiful light fixture on it somehow, and other walls have nice light fixtures, at ground level, that'll help the architecture. So it's something I think we'll look at in the future.
Yeah. I do want to say I like the frontage on Mitchell Drive. I like how it's set back and that it's not, right up against what's a busier road. I do appreciate all the programming that I see as well. I mean, yes, it sounds like we keep saying we want it to be more centralized and integrated with the building, but I like that it seems like there's a lot of the outdoor space that's there, you're using it, which I think is good. And I think that's important, and because I'm all about getting people outside, so I think it's doing that. I think a minor detail for later, I'd love to see a little bit of hierarchy in the pathways, so one is more of a spine that can accommodate more people, and then maybe it's, if you are connecting to the private patios, maybe it's a little narrower so that those who aren't as familiar with the site can understand that might be more private, this is more public, that kind of dynamic. But that I think is something that we can hash out later. What I'm hearing, our biggest concerns are the isolated outdoor experiences, and we'd love to see a consideration for how to congregate those in some way, and if they can't be physically congregated, then more permeability of the buildings, so that indoor-outdoor experience can make it feel like one more unified experience. And I don't think we're attached necessarily to how that's accomplished.
No.
Somehow creating it feel a little bit more cohesive.
But for me, it would be a cut right through the middle of A1 and B2 that connects one courtyard through the middle to the center.
Sure.
And maybe the language is, rather than, you were just talking, we'd love to see this, is it shall be done, or maybe not shall be done, but, something stronger than,
Would be nice, okay.
Yeah.
And they were able to have a much bigger interior patio, I think, between the A buildings, and it just doesn't seem like there'd have to be that much movement in the B buildings, or slight reconfiguration of the buildings a little bit to give a similar sized. It's sort of like the people renting in the B buildings are getting a little cheated on their courtyard compared to the people renting in the A buildings.
Okay, and this isn't necessarily our purview, but I think a senior facility on this area is a great use of it. I like that. I think re-energizing Shadelands with that kind of a use makes a lot of sense. And I think its proximity to what else is going in around there is good.
And Haley, you're getting all this, right? Because we're all over the map.
It is, I'm trying to keep us in buckets, but it comes out.
I think what I'd like to do when all the comments are in is kind of go through a list and make sure that we have a majority of the Design Review Commission that feels the same way
Okay.
on these issues. And those are the ones that'll be brought forward.
Yeah.
Okay,
I want to
so-
back up on one thing. We
Yeah.
talked about materials. If I look at B0.2, Building B on the right elevation, in the original one, it had kind of a stucco base and it had wood above it. Now it's right in the middle. The whole thing is just dark brown painted, which is kind of evil looking. And I think that faces the courtyard as of all things. And so I think that the before version was a better version because it had more of a mix of color and material, and it had a base and, everything, as opposed to just 3 stories of dark wood. And also on that same after elevation, they kind of thinned out the column pieces on the side of the balconies. And I think that the before version had more mass to it and just kind of stood better and looked better. So I think that those kind of things can be adjusted, but I just want to say,
well, I agree. The other thing is, if they are punching holes through this, or maybe half of this goes down to 2 stories and goes up to 4, I think that's gonna help, because what I see is a barracks that is trying to be more architectural through paint and this, but it's still just a rectangular bunch of blocks.
Yeah.
And so maybe by our connectivity issues, if there's real changes to the architecture, that might help quite a bit, in my opinion, to satisfy some of these concerns.
Okay, other comments before we try to put them into our buckets?
I have one that's completely out of the bucket. I don't know if you want to go there.
I don't know if I do
It's
either.
just more of a for a future, so they're not Facade, and it's on landscaping.
Okay.
Do you want me, it's, when you come back, when we're looking at it, was here, I couldn't even review it because it's just a bunch of symbols. So whoever the landscape architect, when you come back, put leader lines on all the plants, and don't just do these 100 different circles that represents different trees and shrubs. It may be a good design, but who knows? And if I can't tell, the contractor in the field sure as heck can't tell. So that was my comment on landscaping.
Okay. Okay. Any other thoughts? Okay, so I'm gonna let Chip do this. Okay.
Okay, so, I'm going to start with some of the big changes. And I'm gonna, some of these are gonna be from the previous study session, just because you talked about it. And it seemed as if you wanted to strengthen the comments.
Okay.
So, let's.
Oh, you gotta turn your mic on, sorry.
So you can give, provide direction to staff on whether that's the case.
Okay.
So one of them is just, is the massing changes that you discussed at the previous meeting did not occur.
No.
Is that a
I
5?
agree.
Yes.
Okay. In regards to the revisions we looked at tonight, the stairway, the comments I heard, this is what I heard anyways, that the stairway did not address the comments regarding pedestrian circulation as well as you had wished.
On the lower
I
level,
agree.
yes.
Is that strong enough?
Yes.
Yeah, it's fair.
The architectural changes to the elevations are hit and miss. Okay. And that would include the arches, that would include the modified cornices, the addition of the sloped roofing, and you mentioned some of the thinning of some of the vertical elements and things like that.
Being too thin, yes. I think the
Yeah.
architect will look at the old drawing and see some of that and re-envision it.
That, and let's, the color palette.
It looks good in the color board, it's a little somber in the rendering,
I
so.
think it's kind of dark and
There's
boring.
a lot of the dark, there's a lot too much of the dark area, so I think it needs to be broken up more. I think as an accent, that dark color's fine, but to do 3 buildings across with all of it is, it's just too much.
Is that do we have a majority?
I'll support that.
I'll go with that.
Okay, let's see. There was a comment that the amenity spaces specifically, and I think was built, the B buildings, could work if they were programmed differently. Is it the A buildings and the B buildings?
Well, A's got bocce courts and an arbor, the other one has just 2 tables, so I think they could do more with that, yes. Right?
I don't know if it's that if they were programmed differently, I think it's
Programmed.
nice that there's a walking path and there's open space, but I think our comment was the programming is minimal.
Okay, but
You
it's not
mentioned that.
necessarily the size of the space, it's more how it's used.
Well, I wish the space could get larger, but
Right.
we're being told it can't, so kind of held in on that one.
But I
You
don't
could
know why
open up
it's
the
not.
center. You could
I don't
open
know
up-
why it's not feasible to
Move the
have a
buildings.
bigger space
Yeah.
because you've got it on the A buildings.
Yeah, it's the size of this building. Causes-
And that'll go with the,
Well, above
and that,
road.
the overarching comment will go with the original comments that were made at the meeting.
Yeah.
And, that's talking about footprint, building location, placement. that kind of-
On the bright side, the front building's are 3 stories tall, not 4, so a smaller courtyard is not quite as evil.
And I think that was the
Yeah.
issues, as I race through. Haley, did I miss anything that you got? What we really want, what would be good is if there's an overall support for the project conceptually, with concerns about the actual design or in site planning.
Yeah, I feel like I support the senior living community. I like the programming amenities I like the treatment along Mitchell. And our primary concerns are the outdoor experience and circulation patterns, I guess. Circulation patterns isn't quite right. It's the,
Connectivity
Yeah.
between the major outdoor space, between the buildings.
yeah.
And again, I agree, I think it's a good use for the area, it's just that it's precedent setting for what we get on this, we're gonna get
Yeah.
less on the next one, so.
Yeah, and let me disagree, just so it's not unanimous, because I think the changes that we're really talking about can't be done just by tweaking a path here and there. So just to make it a little bit stronger, that I agree with you. I have no problem with this being a senior citizen and what they're trying to do, but I think this layout doesn't work.
I agree with Brian that the layout could be improved, especially on the B buildings. There's probably some other way to make that one a little bit better. I'm less concerned with the A buildings because it's got the larger courtyard, which also is gonna get better light during the day in there. Kind of looking at the alleyway between the B buildings. Even at 3 stories tall, how much light's getting in there throughout the day for folks.
I mean, Brian, we did ask for that last time, we thought there'd be more changes, and,
Right.
you know, it's frustrating.
I think it's a great use
Yeah.
of the space, you know. I don't envision another commercial, something like, you know, Joint Genome coming in and taking all that space. So I think it's, and the other reason I think it's a great use for the space is, you know, the state sort of attacking single-family zoning, and the council is trying to do as much urban high density to meet the RENA numbers. So you can go to a place like this, that makes a lot of sense, with the high-density urban housing.
Well, the real problem is, and I understand it, you guys have gone down a road and you have engineering and architecture, and the changes that we're really asking for really means a redesign. You can't just
Right.
go to your landscape architect and say, let's move a tree here and there. And that's the real issue here is, you know, are they willing to essentially start over, you know, and cough up another $100,000 or whatever all your engineering fees are and everything.
Funny, I almost wish, you know, one of each, one was 3-story, one was 4, and the other, you know, just kind of stepping in a different way.
Yeah, I
you
wouldn't
know,
mind
something
that
as
either,
easy
yeah.
as that,
Yeah,
where
yeah.
even if B1 was 4 stories and 2 was 3 and A1 was 3 and A2 was 4, because then you're sort of lowering it to the pool, and you're kind of, for the south, for the light to come in. So, you know, even some idea like that might have been a big picture thing that could have got the
What
same
gets
number
back
of
to your
units.
Study session.
Exactly.
and that sort of-
Yeah, exactly.
And pushing one of the two up would
Yeah.
let you
Mhm.
perhaps have the space in between bigger.
Yeah.
But the question really is, because going back to the original question, which is, how do we want to word, if we all feel as a majority that we really want to see something different, especially on the B side and the connectivity between them all, are we going to say, we don't support it as it is, the design as it is? We support the use, we somewhat support the architecture with some tweaks and colors and materials with some tweaks. That's probably easy to tweak and get to, but the hard one is, do we support it? Because if we say, yeah, we wish, it's going to end up looking just like this.
Yeah.
I know it is.
But I've also looked at this and said, is there another way to do this? And I've even put a piece of sketch paper over and looked at it. It's not horrible. I mean, you know,
Yeah,
there's,
right.
to get that many units on there, you're gonna get massive bulk and you're gonna get
Yeah.
that. You know, making a courtyard 5 feet wider, I don't know that it could be done. And so I'm okay moving it forward because I think they've really worked this. They've made some improvements. The architecture will get better. you know, but we need housing and we need to move it forward and we need to get it done. So for me, I'm ready to move it forward.
And so am I. I have no concerns with the building at all. I mean, that's my position.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable moving it forward as well.
And I think a split position probably gives the council a little bit of where we're coming from, so I'm okay with that.
Me too.
So,
Was that 5 support of moving it forward? Or 4?
4 and 1, I think.
I think you heard
3 and
3
2.
and 2.
3 and 2,
Three
okay.
and two.
I think we feel
Okay.
strongly enough about
Okay.
the design.
On the site plan should
Yeah.
really be redone, okay.
You guys are gonna hate me for saying this, but I'm gonna make my pitch. I am convinced we are moving towards a world that is a little less vehicle dependent, and I trust that you guys are looking at it, but my grandma, who's 85, is using Uber and like doesn't take her car as much. So I just wanna mention if there's a little bit of a lever you could pull to look at some of the parking and see if you could reduce that. So it makes sense, right? I'm not trying to make people angry and have to rent parking stalls somewhere else, but I just.
I'm glad you said that, because I used to
I'm
always say that on
convinced there's an
multifamily too.
opportunity.
You need to have a place for Ubers to stop and pick people up.
Yeah, and
There
I
isn't
think
one.
there's an opportunity for that, and I think it's proximity to the orchards and stuff, especially if it's 55-year-olds, like, they're quite vital. So I think there's an opportunity to consider that, because all our
Did you say
Teslas
55 is quite old?
is not quite old.
Oh, okay.
I
No.
resemble that
Did I
comment.
say quite old? I'm sorry, it's not quite old. And our Teslas are gonna park themselves, you know, so I just feel
You
like,
left out the best part. They can walk across to adopt a pet.
there you go. Anyway.
Oh, that's right.
They have so many pet things in these things.
Okay, so have we provided enough clarity, put things in buckets, so that that is helpful and useful? And if not, what else can we do?
I think so. There was some, there was some architectural comments made on the elevation changes that we can spend a couple minutes being more specific.
You want to tackle that?
Okay,
I won't be here in 2 months, so.
series of blocks was one of the things mentioned. There was a dark section on the courtyard facing facades of D building that I wrote down.
Like specifically about the materials and the roof pitches and the use of, maybe bring back the use of arches or
Well, if you look at BO4, you know, they took, if you look at the upper building, there's an area with balconies on the left, and they kind of thinned down the sides, making it look spindly. And then the kind of the third one in had a little tiny arch on the top and a change of color, and now it's a dark brown mass. And so I think that the old version just had more architecture to it. But I think that, I don't think we can dial in what to fix.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm kind of hearing just at a high level, I think everyone liked getting rid of all the arches. But like, there was some elements of use of color and architectural design elements that we actually liked on the original buildings.
Yeah.
I think the big thing was the arches didn't fit.
Yeah, particularly the ones on top of the building and the ones that were at the entrance.
Yeah.
Like this one here is fine. The one on the left elevation
Yeah.
on building B, there's one little arch in there, it looks fine.
So is this a matter of just further development of the architectural
Yeah,
quality?
absolutely. Yeah. I think the architect will know what we're talking about.
Good enough.
Do you need a motion on that, Chip?
We don't. We can.
He's
we
working
can,
on
We
it.
can end the item.
So it'll be the longest motion.
Okay. Can we close that? All right, great. So with that, we will move on to item number 5, commission consideration. So this is for items that
Wait.
were, oh,
Well, don't we have to have some kind of motion? or-
No, I
No, we
said
don't.
no, we don't. It's just
That's
direction,
what I
I
just
guess.
asked, do we need a motion?
we don't need a motion.
Chip said no.
Oh, okay, so we're just giving our feedback back to planning.
That's
Yeah.
why we were looking for
I
majority favor, yeah.
I get it, thank you.
Okay. Item 5, commission consideration. So these are the items not required to be publicly noticed. Do we have anything this evening?
We do. So the January 5th meeting is.
Thank you.
Has
Thank you.
is canceled,
Okay,
but kind of.
yeah.
there is a sign sub item. So those of you fortunate enough to be on the sign subcommittee, we'll be there at 6 o'clock on January 5th to look at, I believe we're looking at a master sign program.
Okay.
Yeah.
Should we quit the time?
And
I'll start in March.
I believe we're also going to have a sign sub on 119, which brings me to my next point. We may be down a sign sub-commissioner on the 19th. So I think it might be appropriate to have an alternate sign sub-commissioner.
Who's out on the 19th?
And currently, the sign subcommittee is Commissioner Killian and Commissioner Case, correct?
Crowley.
No.
Crowley.
Crowley.
Oh, okay, sorry about that.
That's why we said we're gonna quit sign subcommittee as of 12/31.
Okay.
I guess we have to wait till 3/31 or something?
One more year.
That's the next item. Should we,
Who's up next for science
Do,
subcommittee?
can we appoint, or
An alternate?
can somebody volunteer as to be an alternate for the
What
sign
is that,
subcommittee?
119?
Um,
I will volunteer, I was part of the
You were
sign
in it.
subcommittee.
Okay, yeah, so you know that we
Awesome.
go. Okay.
Carlos,
Right.
do me
Commissioner
justice.
Valia will
Right.
be there for the 119.
No meeting
sign
on the
commission.
5th.
Except for sign sub.
Yeah, okay, good.
What's
I'm
that?
not in that one.
No,
Only on
the 12th or 19th.
Okay.
On your first sign sub meeting, I think it's required to bring sandwiches and chips.
Mental
No,
note.
I was there before.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
so
was
it's not
part-
his first.
yeah,
And
not
beer.
really.
But it's your first one with me,
In
so.
the
No,
trunk.
now you gotta bring the sandwiches because I'm supporting you.
The next item would be on 12/21 for the city council. I believe there's a reappointment interviews for all of you commissioners that have so graciously decided to go for a second term. And I believe that's Commissioner Case, Leah,
I did, yeah.
and
You agreed
Commissioner
to it?
Killian.
Yeah, the 21st, what day is that?
It should be a Tuesday.
At
Is
what
that
time gonna
December?
Uh,
Like next Tuesday?
Yeah.
Okay, I will probably not be here.
Yeah, and it's probably, I have company and I don't know what, well, it depends on the timing and stuff too.
It's like in the afternoon.
I could do a Zoom,
be? Yeah, I can do it over the phone
yeah,
as well.
but
for
I will
sure,
be in
on the
Southern
21.
California.
Okay.
Or they could just kick me off and I don't have to show up.
There's that.
Are they doing new member interviews before that?
And that will be my final
Oh.
item.
Never
Ah.
mind.
And the new appointments will be in February of 2022. And I believe the application should be in shortly. I don't have the date on that. Has Susie reached out to anybody on that? No?
No.
Okay. Let me find out more about that, because I know you have a potential candidate. Does anybody else have anybody in mind
only
that
need one.
would need that information? No?
Think about that.
Okay, so I'll get that to you.
Yeah, make sure.
The dates and whatnot, okay?
Are they gonna cancel the swearing-in party because of COVID?
I don't know.
We'll do it on Webex.
Would you mind you or Susie just sending maybe all of us, like the link to where like if we can find a victim to apply, that we know
Turn up.
where to send them to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I will think on that.
Your mother.
Perfect.
No, she'll shut us down. She wants to be in Calistoga all the time, and she has to watch my children when I'm somewhere, so we
true.
can't
Right,
do the
yeah.
same thing.
But who watches her children?
Right.
We do.
Thank God.
And that, Chair Case, is all I have.
Okay, all right, so with that, we'll move to item 6, commission member and staff reports or announcements.
Nothing
Anything
for
from
me.
anyone,
We just made it on previous.
pretty much.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, with that, adjournment.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you all.